Hello everybody, my name's Carrie. Welcome back to my channel. This is probably going to be the first video that I'm posting since taking kind of a 2-month break. I just have been taking a little bit of time away from this, just focusing on some work goals and just some like personal goals outside of this. And this hobby was kind of so new at the time. I just didn't have the bandwidth and just kind of pushed it to the side. I've made some progress on things, and I have been very much missing doing book videos lately. I've kept up with reading, obviously, because reading is my favorite thing to do. There's just something that is so much fun about sharing all of the book stuff that I do. I did really miss making book videos, and my mom and my friends all kind of reached out to me and they asked me when I'd go back to making them. So here I am. Nobody needs to worry. Everybody can calm down. We've got a book video. Now that that's done with, no need to talk about it anymore. We're moving on to the topic of today's video, and that is the books that I read in the month of January. For the longest time, I was reading probably like 6 to 8 books every single month, and I don't know what happened, but as soon as I started making book content in September and then doing some other things, I've had a lot going on outside of my reading hobbies, and I'm finding that I'm reading on average 4, maybe 5 books a month, which is still great. I am still quite happy that I'm just reading regularly and reading some good books and having a good time, but it does make these videos kind of short, so be prepared for a short video, I guess. I'm sure that you guys really don't care that much, but I did only read 5 books this month. They were 5 pretty decent books, no 5 stars, but I did have a lot of fun. So 4 books were romance, 1 book was mystery thriller. Okay, so the first book that I read in the month of January, I'm looking at my book journal, which I set up recently. I'm very happy about it, but that's why I keep looking down if you're wondering. But the first book I read, Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It was a real fun time. I enjoyed the beginning. I feel like if you've read this book, you know Skylar and West meet in a very dramatic kind of way, and you're just kind of hooked from there. It does slow down a little bit in the middle. I feel like it's really common in romance books for the female main character to be going through something and have all this development and growth, and then the male main character just is kind of there as support, or he's going through learning how to be friendly to other people, something that maybe he should have learned in elementary school. I just feel like the female main character's growth and development always overshadows whatever's going on with the male main character. But in this, I felt like the things that West was going through were just as important, and I feel like his development and growth was just as interesting and, I don't know, inspiring as Skylar's. Skylar definitely had a lot more going on, and she really needed this personal development in this story, and it was fantastic to kind of follow her from beginning to end and see where she ended up and the decisions that she made towards the end. That was great, but I just feel like both of them were such good characters. I was rooting for them so much, and they both just, I feel like, kind of transformed before your eyes. And so even though it was a little slow in the middle of the book, especially when it came to the romance and everything, I still was just so hooked and really just wanted to see where things would end up for the characters. And then at the end, I just was sitting there like, wow, this is supposed to be this like light, fluffy romance, but I just really felt like the character development and story shined in this book, especially out of all of the Elsie Silver books that I've read. It's definitely not my favorite one out of all of them. I will say my favorite is still Reckless, hands down, always will be, but I think this might be second or third out of all of the Elsie Silver books that I've read. I had a really good time with this, and I rated it 4 stars. I just put on perfume, and I just feel like I love this perfume, but sometimes it just has this like very musky scent to it, this very musky like undertone to it, and it is just really hitting me in the back of my throat right now. And I feel like that's just all I can smell. I'm like choking on this perfume right now. Not that you guys needed to know that, but if I start hacking up a lung, that's why. Okay, Mile High by Liz Tomforde. the second book that I read this month and the second book that I read this year. So that's kind of fun. This guy got 3 stars. It wasn't bad, but it had some serious issues, okay? In my personal opinion. There are just some things that I will never buy in a book. Almost never. I'm not going to say never. That's a little too extreme. But there are just some things that I will never find believable in a book, in a romance book specifically. And a total a-hole jerk dude who's always peacocking, being a total playboy, whatever, falling in love with one random girl, and then all of a sudden becoming a softie and not being a total dick to her anymore. It's just not it. I'm never gonna believe that. So because of that, I just really could not get behind this book. But I did love Stevie. I thought that the setting was actually really interesting. This was actually my first sports romance book that I have read probably ever. And it was fun. It was interesting. I will say I need to read more before I decide if it's really like a trope that I'm super interested in. I'm trying to think, what were the positives of this book? None? No. There were definitely some positives. I liked Stevie. I really liked her relationship with her brother. I thought that was really sweet and cute. I know he's the main character of the next one, so I'm actually really excited for that. I thought that her development with her self-esteem and body image issues was really good in this. I did like how she wasn't totally cured of these self-esteem issues by the end. Like, it was still an ongoing journey and development that she was going through. But one thing that I didn't like about it was the fact that Xander's was like the catalyst for this and seemed to be like the main reason that she was, you know, developing these more positive ways of viewing herself and her body. I understand that, like, if you're surrounded by people who are really negative to you, that having somebody who's positive and helps you like realize that those people are kind of terrible to you is a good thing. I just hate the messaging that's often present in media like this that says, if you have a guy, he'll help you. All you need is a guy and all your problems are going to be solved. I don't know. It kind of felt like that in this. Despite these negatives, I did find that I just could not put this book down. It was so entertaining. There was so much drama, so much going on. The stakes were high-ish, but there just was a lot that I wanted to figure out about the characters. They had just a lot going on besides the romance. It was entertaining. It was a good fun time, and that's why it did end up getting 3 stars, despite the fact that the romance between the 2 characters was just really not my jam. Sable Peak by Devney Perry. This is the last book in the Eden series, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm so sad that I'm finished with the series. I feel like I should have dragged it out longer. But Devney Perry came out with a new book, Bluebird Gold, which I also read in the month of January, and I just wanted to finish the series up before going on to that. This guy follows Mateo. I didn't talk about what the other books are about. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Flying by the seat of our pants out over here, okay? We're just doing whatever. It does not matter. This guy is about Mateo and Vera. Vera was in the book before Crimson River, and her story is dramatic and interesting, and so as soon as I finished Crimson River, I was like, I want to read Sable Peak. It just was such a dramatic story. There was something that happened in her past that was referenced several times in Crimson River, and you don't really get the details. She doesn't tell a soul about it. I just deeply wanted to know what that thing was. Not to give too much away, because this book really does feel less like an interconnected standalone and more of a sequel from the previous book in the series, Crimson River. But she is just figuring out life. She ends up living with Anne and Harrison on the Eden Ranch, and Mateo is the youngest son, and he's also got some stuff going on. So they're both there. They have this connection, and they just kind of work through some things together. Their romance was really cute. It wasn't my favorite romance out of all of the romances, but the plot in this was so riveting. I don't know if this one was the most plot heavy, but it was close. I think it definitely had the most sense of urgency and not danger. What is the word that I'm looking for? I just could not seem to step away from this book. But also at the same time, I wanted to drag it out because it was the last one in the series. So I don't know, it was hard. I'm not gonna rank all of them right now, but I will say this is either one or two for favorites in the Eden series. If you've read a few books in the Eden series and you're contemplating whether or not you should continue with the series, I would say do it, because Crimson River and Sable Peak, in my personal opinion, are the best ones, especially if you're going into the series and into Devoney Perry as an author looking for romance with a mystery thriller plot as well. So these guys, the last two in the series, had the most mystery thriller aspect to them. So I think that's why I enjoyed them the most, but I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. I feel like the majority of the books that I read this month did end up being 4 stars. It was a good time. It was well worth the read. And I will say the Eden series for me is a 5-star romance series. I would say it's definitely my favorite interconnected standalone romance series, my favorite small town romance series. Not that I've read a ton, so obviously take what I'm saying with a little bit of a grain of salt, but definitely well worth the read for me. Next up, we read Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Let me tell you, I'm so glad I picked up this series. I've been really enjoying it. This guy was a 4-star. I don't remember what I rated the Naturals. I think it was like a 4.5, something along there. But I have been having so much fun with this, and I really was worried that I wouldn't, because I didn't love the Inheritance Games trilogy. I only read the first one and just kind of decided not to continue with the other two. However, after reading the first 2 books in the Natural series, I'm considering going back to the Inheritance Game series. I do think that I even put it on my series tracker in my book journal. So, I don't know. I feel like that just kind of tells you that I'm having a lot of fun with this, and I'm super excited to see where it goes. This is another book in a series. It's not the first book in a series, so I don't want to go into too much detail about what this specific book is about, but the overall series is about this girl named Cassie whose mother was murdered several years ago. Her mother was a fake psychic, and so growing up with her mother, Cassie, the main character, learned how to really read people, and so she's kind of like a natural profiler. The FBI takes notice of this and recruits her for this specialized program for teenagers who have these natural abilities to help solve crimes and cold cases. It's called the Naturals program. So Cassie ends up being recruited into this Naturals program, and they start off trying to solve cold cases, and obviously some stuff happens. So it's a YA kind of mystery thriller book. So it's not epic. It's just a fun, cozy, good time without actually being like a cozy book. The stakes are high. It's entertaining. I'm having fun. I'm really enjoying where it's going. There's like the tiniest hint of romance, but it's not awkward. It doesn't overpower the story. I will say I have been listening to these guys on audiobook, and I think it's fantastic. The audiobook isn't like the best audiobook I've ever read, but I feel like the story makes sense as an audiobook story just because it's fast-paced and the details are pretty simplistic, so you don't end up getting distracted. I know I get distracted a lot when I'm listening to a book versus reading a book, and I find that with these, I am not getting distracted really at all. So these have been a great audiobook for me, which is a great time saver for me. It gives me back a lot of time in the day if I can listen to an audiobook while I'm doing other things. And so, highly recommend, especially if you're looking for an audiobook series. I'm listening to it on Spotify Premium right now, so if you have Spotify Premium and you're looking for a good audiobook series, and you're one of the 5 people on this planet who hasn't already read this series like me, I'd check it out. The last book that I read this month, I feel like I already gave it away, Bluebird Gold by Devoney Perry. This book, I wanted to read it so freaking badly because it's set in the winter, it's set in the 80s, and obviously it's a new release by one of my favorite authors. I'm here to tell you these cozy winter vibes. Fantastic. This is another book that's a romance book with a subplot of mystery thriller. And I will say, it comes at you with the mystery thriller aspect first. Like the first, I would say, at least third of the book, that is it. That is all you're getting. And I loved that. For me, that's perfect. The romance, sprinkle it in here and there. Obviously, it's still a romance book, so it's not just like a smidgen of romance like Killer Instinct was, but it wasn't just all about the stupid things that people do when they're developing a new romance. There's some real stakes, there's some real drama. It had a serious tone to it. Freaking loved it. It was a really good time. This one is it's set in the 80s, which I thought was really interesting. I've never read a romance book set in the 80s before, so I was kind of unsure if I would love that setting. I like to really be able to visualize what's happening in a book, so I was unsure if I would be able to visualize people in the 80s without giggling about how ridiculous they look with all their big hair and their mustaches, which they had in this book, but totally fine. It did not take me out of it too much. This book follows Isla and Cozy, or Kazi. I don't know how to say his name. I should have looked that up because Cozy does not sound right to me. Isla grew up in Dalton, Montana. Isla's mom moved Isla away from this town in Montana when she was about 6 years old, whereas Isla's dad decided to stay because he loved this small town. This was his home and he refused to leave it. So she has divorced parents. She grew up in Phoenix for, I guess, most of her life and would come back during summers, but over time her relationship with her father became strained, and so she didn't have a ton of contact with him anymore. So unfortunately her father dies and she goes back to this town to kind of settle his estate and clean out his cabin that's in the middle of nowhere basically and sell it. While she's there, some things start happening. So the sheriff in town, Kazi, whatever, is investigating and they start something. It just was so good. Like, it was a good, fun time. I wanted to keep picking this book up. This is not at all related, but I started playing Tiny Bookshop recently around the time that I was finishing Killer Instinct, and so I had a hard time tearing myself away from that, but when I was reading this book, that was not the case. I wanted to get back to this book. I was excited to finish reading it, so I had a really good time. This one, my highest rated book of the month, was a 4.25 stars. The only flaw that I really noticed in this book, the only thing that I would critique, is the fact that Devney Perry writes almost all of her romances the same. The first third, there's something going on, it's exciting, whatever, the people have lives. The second third of the book, we've got just all romance, and it's like, they're happy, and then something happens, and they kind of get torn away a little bit, and in the last half we go all back to the plot, right? Not all back to the plot, but it's like romance and plot mixed in. It does feel a little repetitive after reading several of her romance books. I don't know, it just feels like the plot really stalls in that second third, and you really don't get much of it, and then all of a sudden it's like wrapping up in the last third, and these aren't big books, right? I think this one's about 300 pages, so you're trying to wrap up all this plot in 50 to 100 pages. It seems really fast-paced at the end because of this formatting, but it's not terrible. Like, it's not the worst. It doesn't really take me out of it. I feel like everything is still resolved at the end and you still get that closure that you need without it being overshadowed by something else or just not done properly and in its entirety. I think it's just like a pacing issue. Yeah, ultimately, just a pacing issue. If the books were just chopped up a little bit more and you get romance and plot and romance and plot and romance and plot, that would just make more sense. So that's it for my critique. Other than that, I had a really good time. It was definitely different from books that I'd read before, but still had that same good old Devney Perry format to it in a good way and in a slightly negative way. It was a really good time of year to read this also. I feel like a lot of romance books are set only in the summer. Not all of them, obviously, but it can be difficult sometimes to find a romance book that's set in a nice, fun winter setting. I would definitely recommend picking this book up during the winter time. So those were the 5 books that I read in the month of January. Lots of 4-star reads, no 5-star, unfortunately, and it was nice that the lowest rated book that I read this month was a 3-star. No DNFs, no 1-star reads, so That's always good. I don't know if I'm going to continue reading so much romance in February and March. I definitely will read some just because I got a lot recently. I bought a lot of romance books. I've been really into the genre, trying to branch out. I don't know. It's fun. I'm having a good time with them, but I do want to start reading some of my fantasy romance books again, especially since fantasy romance is probably 90% of my TBR right now. So I'm excited to see what I end up reading in February, especially since I had such a fun time in January. I feel like this is a good start to a good year of reading in 2026. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe or comment or I don't know, just do whatever. It really doesn't matter. But maybe like it. Maybe subscribe. I don't know. Do whatever you want. I'm not your mom, okay? I will see you all in my next video. Bye!